Hello, hello. Thanks for stopping by. I'm Ruby. This is Ruby Red, and today I'm going to talk about the last 5 books that I finished. I always am trying to think of a way to tie all these books together and like pretend it's some sort of theme, but there's absolutely no theme here. These are just the last 5 books that I read. Let's talk about it. All right, so I have finished book number 11 for the year, which means that I'm back and I'm ready to talk about it. So I finished Year of the Monkey by Patti Smith. This is the 3rd novel that I have read from her, and it is my least favorite. I loved Just Kids. I really loved M Train, and Year of the Monkey was fine. Some parts of it I did really enjoy, and then other parts of it were just too fever dreamy for me. So it's vaguely telling the story of some of the travels and experiences that Patti had in the year 2016. So it deals a little bit with the election from that year and responses, and then there is like an added portion at the end where she has like added an epilogue that talks about 2020. So some of that was very impactful to me. Some of it also, of course, was very poetic. She is a poet, but so much of this was dream-based, like having to do with dreams, or like you couldn't tell if it was narrative or if it was a dream, and the two would be blended frequently, which is something I don't love. And yeah, there was just not as strong of a narrative thread through this book as there was with M Train or Just Kids, but there were a ton of photographs, which I did really like, with little captions, and some of them, again, like what but some of them I was like really intrigued by or just like admired. There are also lots of pop culture references, although I found the references in this one to be less literature based and a little bit more about film. I'm comparing her work a lot in attempting to describe this one book, but yeah, that's kind of all I've got. I think I gave it 3 stars. I'm glad that I read it. Again, there were some things that I did really like, but a lot of it just was a little bit like fever dreamy. So that's the first book I finished, and I'll be back once I've read something else. Okay, I actually just finished another book. It is a novella, so it was only about 50 pages, but last night I read the entirety of A Dead Djinn in Cairo by Djeli Clark, and I gave it 4 stars. I really liked it. I thought, I mean, I read it on kind of a whim. I just haven't been feeling super excited about any of the things I'm reading, so yeah, I had a hold on that from I don't remember when, and it just came through, and I was like, you know what, I'll just read it. It was so short, and I knew it was going to fulfill a couple of prompts for the Sims readathon, and so I went for it, and I'm glad I did. There was so much successful world building in such a short span of time, and I was so engaged. I'm not really somebody who is generally drawn to short stories, and just because I want more. So maybe part of it is that I know that this is the prequel to a full-length novel. There's a couple of shorter stories set in this world, which I haven't said a thing about, but it is a sort of a steampunk alternative history of Cairo. It's set in the 1910s, maybe 1920s, I think, but with the inclusion of magic. So there are Djinn, there are these angel creatures, there are ghouls, there are spirits that have been brought into the world and changed the progression of history. So the story is very specifically about one like investigator of magical somethings who is called to the scene of a crime for a suspicious death of a Djinn, and then she just sort of makes her way around the city, interacting with a couple of other magical beings and putting together the mystery of what the heck is going on. So a lot happened in those 50 pages, 47 pages, I think. But again, like the world building was it felt so effortless. Like I was just sold pretty much right away. I was just like, I could see it. The descriptions were vivid enough that I could see it, but not so vivid that it was taking up a ton of time, because this was short. Like we were moving. We had places to be. So I really liked it. I think that the world is a fun idea. It was not really the top of my list for like fantasies that I wanted to start reading, but now it's definitely been pushed up. A Master of Djinn is the title of the full-length novel, and that's the first book in like the series. I think there's going to be even more. So anyway, yeah, I really liked reading that book. I'm glad that I just like read something short that still packed such a punch. Like, what a good time. Highly recommend, honestly. So there you go. Okay, I read another book. I'm in my car right now because I'm early to something and my hair's soaking wet, and I'm just gonna do this anyway. And talk about All Her Little Secrets by Wanda M. Morris. This is a mystery thriller that I just finished, and I really liked it. Sorry, I'm parked kind of right by a busy intersection, but I want to talk about this before too much slips my mind. So the book is about Elise Littlejohn. She is a corporate lawyer. She is working in this company, and she is one of the only Black people working at the company. So much so that there are actually protesters outside the building on occasion. Like, they have a bad rep. So she's working there in the law department, and she is having an affair with her boss. And then her boss is discovered in his office one morning. He killed himself in the office, and it's hard for her to deal with that because she's like struggling to portray the right response, because obviously their relationship is not really what it was like supposed to be. And then it's pretty quickly deemed a suspicious death. So then there's sort of this investigation going on, and of course she's worried that their relationship is going to be aired and all of that. But more importantly, what's suspicious about it, right? So that's kind of the mystery. What happened to him and for what reason? Now, because of this, the company pretty quickly like throws her up in the ranks, promoting her and bringing her to like the higher executive level of the company because they need somebody and they're trying to push all these deals through, blah, blah, blah. And so she's now getting like this new look at the upper levels of this company and how it is like deeply racist. And at the same time, she's also dealing with like some weird stuff. Her brother is like being weird about stuff. And so she's got family stuff, she's got work stuff. And we are cutting back and forth between her past, her childhood, where like something happened, you know, but you don't know. But All Her Little Secrets really implies that something happened. So it was honestly, like, if that sounds like a lot, it was. But it was pretty good. It was really good. And it is a great, I think, example of something that has been on my mind since I read How to Read Now, which is that like everything is political. And also a way that like books that are not written by and for white people are maybe not, or are viewed as being political inherently. I think this book is a great example of that because there is a lot of discussion of racism. It's not like a focal point of the book, but it's a theme. It comes up a lot, and that's just because the main character is Black and her situation means that it needs to be brought up. Whereas like if the main character of this book had been a white woman, even if all of the same stuff happened to her, it would have been a different book because the writing of it would have ignored all of the racist undertones because it didn't apply to her, and she maybe wouldn't have noticed or cared so much the like white supremacist vibes of the company because they weren't like using that against her, basically. So the fact of having a Black main character in this story made it about race, which I think can put people off. But it's worth thinking about that all of those like race-based elements of the story could not be eliminated. I don't know if I'm doing a great job explaining this, but that's how I'm feeling. I just think it's worth thinking about that kind of thing. I also think something that this book did really well to me is deal with issues. As I've said, it does deal with a lot of racial issues, racism, for example. But there's also some cop stuff and some gun stuff that I thought was handled very well, in that it was clearly something that the author wanted to kind of say something about, but it wasn't like plugged in. Like sometimes in thrillers, or especially in romance, it can bother me a little bit to have issues thrown in just to like pretend to give the story substance, when it's like clearly it was just thrown in as like a side plot or an afterthought. And so in this book, it really didn't feel like that. All of those conversations around those issues felt very central to the plot and very, like, I don't know, well approached is really all I can say. Yeah, I really enjoyed the book. So that's my review and summary and who knows what else of All Her Little Secrets. Really, the secrets were not little is the main takeaway. The secrets were huge. But okay, it's time for me to go. I'll be back once I've read another book. Okay, I finished another book, and that's Autumn by Ali Smith, and I liked it. It's part of the Seasonal Quartet by Ali Smith, which sort of explores 4 seasons, obviously, but as themes, I think, and the main like theme and focus of this autumn book was memory and, you know, the passage of time. And that was interesting. I really liked it. It was very interesting to read so close to having read The Year of the Monkey, to be honest, because they had a lot in common, but there was a lot less dream specific kind of stuff in Autumn, and a lot more just like getting lost in your memory, which I just preferred. And it also had a bit more of a narrative, so the plot, if you will, is about the friendship between Elizabeth, who is our main character, and Daniel Gluck, I think. So this man was her next door neighbor. He was like, you know, kind of an older man, even when she was young. And they sort of develop a friendship. He knows a lot about art, and he kind of talks to her, not as an equal, but kind of, you know, and that is something that's like very, I think, that sticks with you when you're a child and an adult is talking to you and like actually listening to you and treating you like you have a brain and you have opinions and thoughts and stuff that are worth hearing. So that was very formative memory for her friendship with him, and it had a big impact on her career path, basically her life path. And so we get some of their, you know, years of being friends, and he's like her kind of babysitter too. So we get that part of their story, and then kind of how that affects her trajectory and her relationship with her mom, and then where they are now, which is that he's in a care facility, he is very close to death, and she is visiting him. Yeah, that's like what it's about, but it also had this whole like subsection, or not even subsection, a huge part of the book is exploring the work of one specific pop artist from the 60s, and I ended up going down a little bit of a rabbit hole looking up her work and, you know, her life. So that's always fun to bring like outside things into a book that you're like actively reading. Like they're talking about her artwork and I'm looking at it. I love that. Anyway, it's also kind of about Brexit and some other like political turmoil, but like pretty low level political angst overall, I would say. It just, the writing was kind of funny, kind of witty, kind of fun. I don't know. I like this book. I don't feel like I have done a good job explaining this book, but this is the second time I've tried to do so. So we're just gonna roll with it. I really liked this book. I gave it 4 stars. I think if I had read it even a year ago, I would have loved it. I think I could have been obsessed with it. So I'm glad I read it, and I am interested in reading the other books in the quartet. We'll see. And I'll see you once I have finished another book. And the 5th and final book that I finished was Our Wives Under the Sea by Julia Armfield, I think. And yeah, this was really good. Pretty good. Really good? Pretty good. I think it was pretty good. This book is hard to classify genre-wise. It's definitely like weird, speculative. I have seen it being shelved as horror, but I think that is wrong. I don't know. Okay. It's about, it's about 2 wives, and one of them goes under the sea. One of them goes on a like an ocean-based research trip, and like it takes way longer than it was supposed to. And the other wife, what's her name, Miri, and Leah is the one who goes on the trip, and then Miri is home waiting. And the book is told from alternating perspectives, and Miri is kind of telling the story of what's happening now that Leah is back, and Leah is telling the story of what happened in the submarine. So you're getting, you know, it's slowly coming together, and it's also like slowly kind of escalating, feels like the wrong word, but the intensity builds in both directions. The trouble for me is just that I was so much more interested in Leah's chapters, and I found Miri's narration and like experience to be just not as interesting, not as engaging, and I just was struggling to care a little bit. I think the writing technically was very good, but it just didn't all come together quite as strongly as I hoped it would. It was really just the ending that made this book 4 stars for me. I really, really liked how it ended. I liked how things sort of wrapped up for Miri, but I found myself extremely disappointed by how Leah's like narrative segment wrapped up. The ending was just very confusing for me, and there was a lot of good stuff in this book about grief and like loss without having lost, and uncertainty. I think that's what was meant to be like the thing in this, was that like uneasy disconnection, like confusion, but it didn't ring that true for me. And honestly, I have this written down as 4-star book, but the more that I'm trying to talk about it, I think it's just 3 stars. This book was, again, like it was good. I am glad I read it, but I am not obsessed with it. I just don't think it did enough for me. The pacing felt off for me, and only half of the ending felt good. The other half felt really bad. So that's my take on that book. I feel like I've only been hearing it get rave reviews, so maybe my expectations were a little high. But yeah, that's where I'm at with Our Wives Under the Sea. And that's the 5th book that I read. So time to wrap this whole thing up. Thank you so much for watching. I appreciate you being here, spending some time with me, and listening to what I have to say about 5 absolutely out of nowhere books. Like, what a collection. Doesn't make sense, doesn't go together. That's how I read. So yeah, thank you for being here. Let me know if you've read any of these down below, and if you agree or disagree with me. Let's start something. Yeah, okay, I'll see you next time. Thank you, love you, bye.